I simply cannot find her.
Maria?
She's missing from the Abbey again.
Perhaps we should have put a cowbell around her neck.
I have looked everywhere, in all of the usual places.
Considering that it's Maria, I suggest you look in someplace unusual.
In 1964, while filming The Sound of Music, one sound caused havoc on the set and almost devastated one of the movie's most memorable scenes. It was not tragic. It wasn't even dramatic. It was a joke. Too much of a joke. So much of a joke that everyone couldn't maintain straight faces. Take after take was ruined. The studio spent thousands attempting to correct the issue, then decided to cover up the story entirely. For decades, it remained buried until Julie Andrews finally spoke the truth on the television show. What actually occurred in that gazebo? And why would Christopher Plummer, whom hated the movie, agree to remain silent? To respond to that, we must look back, not to Salzburg, nor even to Broadway, but to West Germany during the 1950s, where a small family film had the world go quietly wild. Europe falls in love. It started in the middle 1950s when Maria von Trapp's autobiography, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers, was discovered by German movie makers. In 1956, director Wolfgang Liebeneiner produced Die Trapp Family, and then a sequel in 1957. They were low-budget productions, sentimental, very European in flavor, but they succeeded. Post-war Germany was a nation that needed to heal. The people were crying out for stories of hope, family, and survival. A story of an Austrian family opting for music and love over terror resonated deeply. Both pictures became box office hits in West Germany, the largest successes in their time. The magic caught on rapidly leaping borders and languages. It was a hit with South Americans. Europeans from Italy to Scandinavia swooned for it. But when the movies arrived in Hollywood, the response was frigid. American studio executives believed they were high school productions, corny, sentimental, and too foreign. No one cared. No one, that is, until Tony Award-winning director Vincent J. Donahue screened them. Initially, he reacted the same way as everyone else, awkward, clumsy, and much too sweet. But then he saw something beyond the rough-around-the-edges stuff. Below the old-fashioned filmmaking was a soulful story. And Donahue did something that no one else was brave enough to do. You can't film this. You have to produce it, a Broadway musical for Mary Martin. That one sentence set off a chain of events that would turn Maria von Trapp's humble book into one of the greatest musicals of all time. But it never would have come to be if Maria herself hadn't made one of the worst business decisions of her life. The $9,000 deal. Maria von Trapp was no Hollywood player. She didn't have lawyers, agents, entertainment advisors. She was a widow attempting to provide for her big family. So, when German film producers came knocking early in the 50s wanting to purchase her life story, she sold the rights for an upfront fee of only $9,000. Even in cash for 50s, it wasn't substantial. Adjusted for the present day, roughly $104,000. A good take, but pennies in comparison to what was on its way. Worst of all, she had signed away more than she knew. When Hollywood came knocking subsequently, eager to make a film based on the story inspired by her book, Maria refused to let them Bowdlerize it. No selective omission, no whitewashing. If the Von Trapps were going to be portrayed, they were going to be portrayed in the best possible light. In the meantime, Richard Halliday and his wife, Broadway star Mary Martin, were on the prowl for their next big stage production. They were captivated by Maria's tale. The only issue, Maria von Trapp herself had disappeared, lost in Papua New Guinea. In the late 50s, Maria was not in America at all. She was in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, carrying on missionary work with Father Franz Wasner, the family's musical director for years. There are no phones, no email, no speedy means of communicating with her. Producers' letters accumulated at every mission stop. Maria did not even bother to open them. She ripped them up. She was not interested in Broadway. She was interested in serving villages, teaching, and living simply. But fate did its work. When Maria finally traveled back to the U.S. by boat, she arrived in San Francisco. And waiting for her at the pier was none other than Richard Halliday himself. He presented her with 2 tickets to see Mary Martin in Annie, Get Your Gun. Maria, perhaps out of courtesy, accepted. The performance stunned her. Mary Martin's charisma lit up the stage. Maria was moved, but still hesitant. She explained she had already sold her story rights to German filmmakers. Still, she gave the couple a surprising green light. "You're welcome to give it your best shot." That casual okay was all it took. The wheels of Broadway history began to turn. Rodgers and Hammerstein changed the game. Initially, the producers contemplated using classic Austrian folk songs, interspersed with a handful of new Broadway show tunes to hold the production together. But when they came calling for Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein to donate a couple of songs, the famous pair expressed themselves in no uncertain terms. All or nothing. They didn't want their music competing with Austrian ballads. So, the producers dropped the plan for folk song interludes. Rodgers and Hammerstein would compose the entire score. And what a score it was. Do Re Mi, My Favorite Things, Edelweiss, Climb Every Mountain. Songs that would reverberate through centuries. On November 16, 1959, the Lunt-Fontanne Theater curtain went up. Mary Martin was Maria. Theodore Bikel was Captain Von Trapp. The musical was a sensation. Ticket sales went wild, raking in the modern day equivalent of hundreds of millions. It played more than 1,400 times before closing in 1963. Hollywood couldn't keep its eyes closed to it anymore. A studio on the brink. Before the summer of 1960, there was a bidding war for movie rights. 20th Century Fox emerged victorious, offering an astonishing $1.25 million, a huge risk for a struggling studio. Fox had almost disintegrated from the cost overrun of Cleopatra, which ran $15 million into the red and destroyed careers. Executives were shaken. If The Sound of Music bombed, Fox would go out of business. But as the contracts were signed, a sly little clause was included. If the film grossed over $12.5 million, Rodgers and Hammerstein's estate would receive 10% of the take. Co-writer Howard Lindsay laughed at the suggestion. Not in a million years, he declared, would the film gross so much. He couldn't have been more wrong. Julie Andrews' Revenge. Julie Andrews was, by now, a Broadway sensation with My Fair Lady. But when Hollywood made it into a movie, the studio passed her over. They said she wasn't camera-ready, too plain for the screen. They used Audrey Hepburn instead, someone who couldn't sing the part and had to be dubbed. It was a heartbreaking rejection, but fate stepped in again. Disney had hired Andrews for Mary Poppins, and director Robert Wise of The Sound of Music was presented with an early cut. He recognized in an instant she was ideal. In order to prevent anyone else from signing her, he booked her for Maria. Her salary? A flat $225,000. No royalty. No bonus. Once it was cash, that was it. Ironically, Mary Martin, who created Maria on Broadway, collected more than $8 million in profits from her share. Andrews, for her part, never received a dime above her flat fee, despite fronting a film that eventually became one of the most financially successful of all time. But Andrews got the ultimate sweet revenge. Mary Poppins was a hit, and she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. On stage, she playfully thanked Jack Warner, the same individual who had turned her down for My Fair Lady. The crowd erupted, but The Sound of Music would prove to be her greatest role. Casting Captain Von Trapp. If Julie Andrews was the ideal Maria, finding Captain Von Trapp was a nightmare. Sean Connery, Richard Burton, even Bing Crosby were all considered by Robert Wise. All said no. Lastly, Christopher Plummer was solicited. Dignified, classically trained, incisive, and indifferent. He loathed the script, finding it too sweet. He referred to it as the sound of mucus. But Wise persisted in believing in him, traveled to London, and persuaded him on one condition: that the captain's role be rewritten with greater depth. That stipulation brought forth Edelweiss, composed expressly to provide Von Trapp with a moment of weakness. Despite this, Plummer despised the part. He drank through most of the shooting. In the farewell concert number, a scene with one of the most emotional moments of the movie, he was drunk. But the performance touched millions. Interestingly, he himself earned a flat check. No royalties. No share in the profits. Like Andrews, he pocketed much less than the film would go on make. Casting the children. Casting the Von Trapp children was a search lasting several months. There were hundreds of auditionees. Teenager Mia Farrow attempted 3 times for Liesel, but was dismissed as sweet, but no spark. Charmian Carr, already 21, played 16-year-old Liesel. A high school student, Kurt Russell, and Patty Duke and Terry Garr auditioned for other parts. Nicholas Hammond finally won the role. Years later, he'd be TV's original live-action Spider-Man. The kids immediately clicked with one another and Julie Andrews, the friendships with them enduring a span of decades. What was seen on screen was genuine closeness. Box office takes over the world. No one foresaw what happened next when The Sound of Music was released in 1965. Within a period of 18 months, it overthrew Gone with the Wind, which had dominated the box office for almost 3 decades. It grossed more than $286 million, actual 1960s money, not adjusted for inflation. That meant almost 1 in every 12 living souls purchased a ticket. Across villages that did not have electricity yet to big cities, the tunes went viral. And then Oscar night. 5 awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. The movie was not merely a light, frivolous musical anymore. It was art. The gazebo disaster. But off-camera, one of the most romantic scenes didn't quite come off. Maria and the captain's infamous gazebo love scene has become a classic. But the carbon arc lights that created a moonlit effect emitted a sound that was exactly like a fart, with every lean-in by Plummer to kiss Andrews, they attempted 20 takes. Each one of them was destroyed by laughter. In the end, Robert Wise abandoned the initial plan and filmed in silhouette, covering their faces. What appeared dreamy and deliberate was actually damage control. Fox covered up the story, instructing cast and crew to remain quiet. No one knew for decades, until Julie Andrews discussed it on a talk show years later. Actual danger on set. The shoot wasn't all laughter. Little Gretel, played by 5-year-old Kim Carruth, nearly drowned during the boat scene. She couldn't swim, and when the boat tipped, she went under twice before being pulled out. She vomited lake water and developed a lifelong fear of swimming. Julie Andrews herself wasn't exempted either. During the opening meadow shot, a helicopter hovered just 20 feet above her. Every time, the downdraft pushed her into the grass. She was knocked over repeatedly, then was required to pop up smiling as if nothing happened. The movie appeared magical, making it seem like surviving. Plummer's misery. For Plummer, the suffering wasn't confined to the physical. He hated the sentimentality of the film. He resented being stuck in Salzburg, drank to excess, and resented the fact that his singing voice was replaced by Bill Lee. He ridiculed the film as S&M for decades. But later in life, mellowed by age, he conceded that the movie had charmed him after all. A gamble that saved a studio. Fox had everything riding on The Sound of Music. With Cleopatra almost bankrupting them, a failure would have ruined the studio. Instead, the runaway success of the movie saved not only Fox, but reformed the Hollywood musical. What started as a shredded letter in Papua New Guinea ended up as one of the world's most adored films. And despite the cast suffering flat contracts, drowning scares, helicopters, and farting lights, the end product was pure movie magic. And that's the irony of The Sound of Music. A movie conceived in error, near mishaps, and reluctant leads became one of the most uplifting, optimistic, and resilient pieces of art ever created. The Hills were perhaps alive with the music, but behind the cameras they were alive with mayhem, laughter, and near catastrophe. And yet somehow it all coalesced into a tale